This video, I wanted to show you guys the 10 basic strikes from the Anastacio curriculum. I want to show you in 3 main ways and then show you how that teaches us how to spice things up and do it in our own particular style. So the 10 basic strikes, I'm not going to break down too much, and I'm not going to do as many reps as you saw in the last 2 videos in a full routine, just kind of more of a breakdown again. So we'll start with single stick. I'm going to count it out real quick. I'm in my right lead, sticks in front, safety hand. This is angle 1, angle 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Now, when we bring it on to double stick, the 10 basic strikes are kind of like 10 basic entries, and I'll explain that in a second. But just to show you how we do this, we start from almost like a neutral position with our sticks chambered this time. And we strike about halfway for the first 6. So this is 1, left side is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, round stab 7, again 8, we turn that to an umbrella block, shuffle back 9, upward thrust 10. Okay, so you can see the difference between single stick and double stick. Number 1, my backhand is mostly done with my left hand. Now I could change that up, which we'll talk about in a second, but the main difference is that I'm incorporating 2 sticks. So there's a lot of symmetry and mirroring going on, and not necessarily done with the same hand, right? So another big thing, if you notice in number 9, when I did the sunrise strike, I now have the opportunity to create an umbrella block where my safety hand would normally be up for single stick. I just replace that with a stick, because why not? It's in my hand, okay? The angles themselves are pretty much the same in terms of the length of the strike, the reach of the strike. But now when we switch to barao, we start with our single knife here. You could do it in 2 different ways. You could do it in standard grip. I'm going to do it in pakal grip just to stay within more of like the knife round. So I'm going to be leading with my thumb. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that one you see a much more of a bigger difference. Number 1, we look at the difference between the weapons. This is an edged weapon. It's going to lacerate, it's going to cut. A lot of the times it's going to puncture as well if I'm doing a round stab, reverse stab concept. But most importantly, the reach is a lot different. So when we are talking about edged weapons, especially in a more short range weapon, we have to understand that my knife isn't going to create contact with their knife. In double stick and single stick, a lot of that happens, right? You get that reference point, angle 1 to angle 1, angle 2 to angle 2, so on and so forth. But you're not going to see that in the knife. So if I stretch out my hand and try to fight using my knife in more of a medium long range position I would with my sticks, then I expose the connection, and this is where my opponent wants to hit me. They don't want to hit my knife, they want to hit my arm. They want to be slicing around here, stabbing around here. So I have a much more compact frame. And not only am I focusing on driving the knife through, but I'm focusing on retaining the knife in either a closed position or an open position. I keep it nice and tight using my elbow and my lats, right? Very boxer frame oriented, and I let that dictate how my strikes are going to be done. It's a lot less fancy if you were to think about that, and that's one of the reasons why I don't really do too much of my knife sinawalis on Instagram or social media. It's not something that people really want to see, because it's very literal and straight to the point. I'm going to slash, I'm going to stab. I'm going to stab to slash, so on and so forth. I'm not going to be doing talapilones or abanicos or crazy flips and tricks, right? So that's pretty much how the 10 basic strikes would be done across the board. Now, to keep it as the 10 basic strikes, it's boring, it's very one-sided, it's very to the book. And I'm very keen on structure, don't get me wrong. But at some point in time, you're gonna have to develop your own personality in martial arts, your own personality in general. And because the 10 basic strikes are good for everyone, a particular strike might favor you and not the other person. So as you start training those 10 basic strikes, you wanna, number 1, understand the mechanics, that's the bare minimum. But now, number 2, you want to start seeing how you can fit that into your game plan. So when we think about 10 basic strikes, in reality, they're 10 basic angles. They're 10 basic references. And we kind of take that template and we mold it to our favor. So I'm going to show you a very simple way that I'm going to mix up the 10 basic strikes. I'm going to try to keep it in that order and try to count it out as well. We go back to the single stick. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So something I did there, I took my angle 1, my angle 2, and I replaced it with a trapilon. Follows the same line, but now this is more of a with tick strike and more of a double strike as well, depending on how you want to apply that. You have the forehand backhand side. I did a scooping horizontal strike. It just gives me a little bit more of a elusiveness, if you will. In some cases, you can even turn that into a reverse slash if the opportunity presented itself. So I did that for 3 and 4. 5, I did a reverse forehand trapilon. And number 6, I don't really like the backhand reverse trapilon. I kind of omit that from my game plan. But I turned that into a sombrada. So this isn't necessarily a strike anymore, but it's almost like either I'm going to shove something out of the way, or I'm going to shield my arm as I go for an eye jab or a sunda. Right? Once I get here, I kept the round stab and the reverse stab the same, just to get a little bit of variety in terms of slashes versus thrusts. But when I went for the sunrise strike, which is traditionally supposed to finish at the ground, you're supposed to cut straight through that target. Now I did a forehand arco, which is a circular slashing strike. And for me, that's very, very good to, number 1, reposition my stick from palm up to palm down and still keep the rhythm going. It's a very good glancing shot. So if I'm moving, if I'm in transition, it's very easy to just step back, clear some space, and keep the strikes moving. Now, one of the biggest things that look like, what the heck did I just do? Number 10 is our upward thrust, but I used the puño section and I turned my body away, and now I'm using the puño section for the upward thrust there, right? So it's almost like using a lead elbow to strike. That's more corto or close range. But again, all of that is based from the 10 basic strikes. Let's look at it again in the double stick. So, double stick. What we look into, if you guys have watched previous videos, if you're Anastacio students, we have right hand lead and left hand lead. We no longer have just a live hand and just a safety hand that we would in single stick. So that means I could jump in between this being my angle 1 or this being my angle 1, okay? I can also jump in between double stick and single stick 10 basic strikes. So let's give it a shot. This is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I stayed within the frame of the 10 basic strikes, but I jumped from left hand lead, right hand lead, as well as single stick and double stick. You saw at some points I did an X pattern, right? And that stayed in the same hand. So understanding where you can plug it in is very, very important, and knowing the strength of being able to choose. I don't have that option in single stick, and that's something I want to emphasize when I have my own personality in double stick, because I don't want it just to be right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand. I want to be able to mix that up at will. Okay, now we're going to go into the barao, or the knife. We'll keep it in the pakal grip, and again, 10 basic strikes, a little bit of personal flair here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so very compact, very swift. One thing I did add in, stab to slash method, very common in edged weapons. We're using the point of the blade to puncture, and then from there we rotate to navigate the knife out to retain, and as we're navigating out, we incorporate that slash, right? Most of the time, if you're just slashing, you would lead with the thumb in the pakal grip. Because I lead with the blade, I can puncture. 3 and 4, I only punctured. So as I came here, I could have easily rotated and gone to the backhand side, but I thrust, I come back, I turn my body with that hip and shoulder. Thrust, come back, like a snapping strike, hip and shoulder. And that gets me there. So remember, I'm not letting the weight of my weapon drag me from open to closed position. And I'm not trying to use range. I'm trying to use my body mechanics to drive the knife through from different angles. Okay, so 10 basic strikes. A lot of the basics and fundamentals that I teach online, as well as on YouTube, it's a mere it's a bare minimum. It's kind of like, this is Khalid, but this isn't you. This isn't what you want. This isn't what you think works best. And in a systematic approach of Filipino martial arts, it's very important that you systematically approach combat sports, whether it's for self-defense or for sport. You can't just think that the way that I do 10 basic strikes, the way that I do the P drill, the way that I punch, the way that I kick is the only way that I need. Doesn't mean you have to be good at all of them, but you gotta kind of dip your foot in the water and see why they do it this way and what are the pros and cons of that. And then you start to shape shift your own basics, your own basic jab, cross, your angle one, to the way that you feel is gonna work best for either this opponent at this time, based off of their attributes or based off of your strengths versus your weaknesses. Okay, so those are things you wanna keep in mind when you're training. I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this video, Re-Up Recovery. I'm super excited not only for what they do, but from where they are from, a fellow Canadian company on the other side located in Vancouver. But they went ahead and sent me the Prepare Roll-On as well as the Recovery Deep Tissue Eucalyptus Cream. So if you guys know me, you know how important it is to me to be able to maintain my body, to stay consistent and be able to do this day in and day out. Once we're open, I do this multiple hours of the day, 6 days a week. On the 7th day, I'm resting, but I'm working my brain. So if you feel like you're tired the day before, if you feel like you worked a little bit too hard and you need to give yourself that little bit of jolt before your next session, for your next training class or whatever it might be, the Prepare Roll-On gives you that sensation, helps the blood pump, super, super essential. And even more so, if you guys are training hard, your gyms are opening, your mats are available for you to train, and you're just gunning it, you gotta make sure that you prepare yourself for the next day. You gotta make sure you don't hurt yourself. So if you are feeling a little bit sore, the recovery cream is super, super essential. The prehab and rehab to training is the unspoken hero of it all. It's not just what you do on the mat, it's what you do outside. And I'm super, super big on that. So if you guys are interested in grabbing yourself some of the products, you can go ahead and check them out. The description box will have their website, and you can go ahead and use MARK10, that's MARK10, to save yourself 10% off. So thank you, Re-Up Recovery team. We're definitely gonna put these in use and can't wait to get back on the mats. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. We are on the way to the gym, just making a couple pit stops. Got to pick up some uniforms from the supplier. Got to grab a little bit of food, and then we'll be filming with James. Some AKA content for you guys. It's a beautiful day. The weather has been great. It's supposed to be a high of 18 degrees, that's Celsius for my Americans. But the gyms are still closed. Anyways, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I told my students I wouldn't, because every time I do, it seems like I jinx it. So I'm just going to wait patiently and do what I do until we get the green light. And then I can finally start to bring you guys more content. And that's been one of my goals. Is I know you guys are probably sick and tired of just seeing me do solo training or just hearing me talk about how the academy is closed. I do want to give you guys more. I do want to bring you along more. But it's pretty limited, you know. I don't want to jeopardize people's safety when it comes to making additional content with people outside of, James. And so with that being said, it's very difficult for me to have a cameraman, get good angles that James has been killing lately, and be able to have a partner all at the same time to demonstrate these things that I'd like to show you guys. And on top of that, nothing to take away from James, but James is more of a kickboxer. He spends most of his training in the academy when we were open with the actual striking classes. So he's actually a yellow sash in Khalid. I'll credit him a little more because of how many times I've used him as a fall guy and a partner. So I just briefly teach him. He has an idea. And most importantly, for production's sake, he knows what I'm trying to demonstrate. So he can help demonstrate that along with me. All right, so for this video, I wanted to break down a couple of sparring techniques I like doing, slight little combinations that beat my opponent to the punch. I do want to show you guys in real time though. Obviously, it's gonna be a little scripted because me and James aren't actually sparring. But once the academy does reopen, then I definitely want to get some live sparring breakdowns between me and a couple of my students at various experience levels, so you guys can see how this fits in. So anyways, one of the first ones I like doing is when I'm a little bit more aggressive, and normally when I spar, I'm pretty jumpy without being too energy wasting. But anyways, I like to do what I call like a drop shot or a bouncing shot. I give an angle 3, and ideally what I want is I want that reaction of an angle 1, because I want to open up this little pocket for me to move here. And so when I open that, I'm going to drop down, drop my body, I'm going to bounce off the ground, and I'm going to slash through his armpit. Either hitting his body, either hitting straight through the armpit, in the bicep, maybe even in the forearm, depending on how much he commits to that angle 1. So if we're sparring here like this, I see the reaction, I go underneath, I strike, and then I move to the outside and I continue however I need to continue. Right? So that's kind of like the first one I like doing to catch a lot of people off guard. Highly successful. However, you can't do it too many times because then that bounce loses its value. And every time I start hitting the ground and changing my levels, they become numb to it. Okay, so this one is a little bit more of like a sneaky strike. It's nothing too crazy, nothing too athletic like the first one. And so if we're kind of like in almost like a closed position, I throw an arco, and when I don't really commit to it, there's not much of a reaction on the other side. They kind of just move their hand away. Right? So if I try to hit his hand, he's just going to move his hand away. Right? That's exactly what I want him to do. So I'm going to do a first arco to roll into a second arco, and that's when I'm going to hit his arm. Okay? Depending on how far he moves it, it could be the hand, it could be the head, depending where we are. But this is very nonchalant, so almost the exact opposite. I'm sparring here like this, I do one arco, and then I roll forward and I hit it again on the second one. Okay? So I kind of have, those are my go-tos from the forehand side and the backhand side. This one's a little bit more center line. So once I get the attention up, so let's say I'm doing a higher arco strike or a sunrise strike, and he tries to do an umbrella block here, I rotate my stick backwards, so I twirl it backwards, and then I drive it into an upward thrust towards the body. So not necessarily towards the neck like the original 10 basic strikes are, but in that center line vicinity. Right? So that one's really good if you know that you have the superior timing and the superior dexterity with the stick, where I can cause this reaction and manipulate my stick really fast and change the line. And particularly with the padded sticks, we're not looking for too much power. We're really looking almost like human chess and not putting too much pressure so that we end up injuring ourselves or injuring each other and then we can't spar anymore. But with that, you can also do it the opposite way, and probably the opposite way is the more effective one in my preference at least. So now I start with the upward thrust, and he wants to try to deflect that out of the way, right? So as soon as I feel that sensation, I rotate around and then I smack the head on top. And I'm using a twirl, but I'm trying to strike like an arco or a sunrise. So as I rotate this around, it's almost like very relaxed, but as it's coming on top, I tighten it up and I drive through. And again, these are very timing based. They're very, there's layers to it. You could arguably spar with the simple range gauging, angle 1, angle 2, follow X patterns, but this is just something a little bit more particular. And more importantly, I think that you guys can practice this on your own without a partner, because you can treat it like bag work or pad work, right? It may not necessarily be the fight, but you don't just jab cross. I mean, you do, right? So you do an angle 1 and angle 2 when you're training by yourself, but there's particular combinations that you want to add into your repertoire, so you get a little bit more value for your solo training or your bag work, your pad work, the accessory training, right? So again, if we're sparring over here, right? I try to get him to move first. I have a lot of pressure. I drop down angle 3, I slash. If we're more in a closed position, I'm going arco to double arco here, and that's gonna cause him to get hit on a very lazily retract. And then the third one is I make him umbrella block up here, rotate underneath, upward thrust, or we do the opposite. I go for the upward thrust, try to deflect it, I come on top, and I strike the head. And our Uber Eats is here. So we just finished up the virtual classes for tonight. It went really well. I was able to break down a couple things that are going to be explained to all my online students for the March cycle. So I'm super excited to share that to you. And I'm very happy with the way that the curriculum has been progressing, in the sense of the way that I'm able to take the drills and the things that are probably on my channel already, but really break it down so that everybody from every level of experience can comprehend, understand, and most importantly, take away from it to improve their overall skill set. So we're just gonna wrap up tonight, and we'll be back for a couple of exciting things happening to the Academy. But I'm gonna end the video here. I wanna thank you guys so much for watching. And if you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up. I tried to put a little bit more content, but again, guys, as soon as the ball is rolling with the Academy and we're allowed to do a little more, I'm gonna bring you so much more content. So if you guys are up for that, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you want to train with me, you guys already know, AnastacioKhalid.com. Links in the description box. Check out Re-Up Recovery. And until next time, wherever you guys are, hope you're staying safe. I'll catch you guys then.